Don't you just love making? I was literally just making one video ready to send out to you guys, and then we get some breaking news. The XFL. The XFL lives once again. This league has more lives than the proverbial cat because there's been some breaking news that the XFL has been sold to a group that includes former WWE icon Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yes, the XFL will indeed be returning for the third time, giving the now bankrupt Football League the kind of star power that, to be honest, it didn't have. It really didn't have. A lot of people, pro wrestling fans, of course, went across to watch the XFL because they were fans from WWE and they were interested to see what happens. Obviously, football fans too, when you have that lull between NFL seasons in the spring. You had the XFL and people watched. And to be fair, I watched a few episodes when it came back this year, and it was good. It was good. It wasn't bad at all. It was unique. It was different, and I enjoyed it. But obviously things changed, and it got sold, and we'll get into that in a second. But The Rock has purchased a stake in the XFL, and the XFL will be coming back once again. Now, Variety's sister site Sportico first reported the news that the XFL had been bought by a group that included Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson for about 15 million, they're saying. Apparently, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, of course, now known for so many things, whether it comes to professional wrestling or when it comes to acting, producing. He's got his production company, Seven Bucks Productions, and he's got his fingers in so many pies, but now that pie will also include the XFL. He apparently, of course, he used to play American football too. He was played college football at the University of Miami. He's turned up with Jerry Cardinals, I believe is how you pronounce it, Redbird Capital, to buy the league just hours before a planned auction was scheduled to begin to sell off the league. Now, they've paid around $15 million, splitting it evenly between The Rock, Jerry Cardinal, and Johnson, The Rock's business partner, Danny Garcia, who's also his ex-wife. She'll be a stakeholder too. I don't know if there's going to be other people involved in this deal. Sometimes when it comes to these sort of capital companies that buy up things, there's lots of different stakeholders. At the moment, we only know about Jerry Cardinal, Danny Garcia, and The Rock. To be honest, $15 million when it comes to a football league is a bit of a steal. Even in this economy, it is a bit of a steal. Redbird at the moment has a litany of sport-related investments. They've got ties with the NFL and its players rather. They've also recently bought French soccer football team Toulouse, who is not a massive soccer team or football team. I'm going to call it football. I'm British. Isn't a massive football team here in Europe. They're known mostly in France. Obviously, that's where they play, but they're roughly known. They've played in some European competitions, but you never know when you get a bit of financial backing in football nowadays. You can rise up the ranks, and that might be the case here. The presence of having The Rock own a part of the XFL continues professional wrestling's involvement in the XFL too. Of course, the XFL is the brainchild. It was founded and funded by WWE Chairman Vince McMahon back in 2001 when they had their inaugural season, which was a disaster. It's been the subject of documentaries and all of that fun stuff, the XFL. In fairness, in parts it was ahead of its time, but in some parts it was just so badly run, and just they had no idea what they were doing, and the standard of American football during that first season was shocking. But some parts of it were very good, and we've even seen parts of it actually been incorporated into a modern day NFL. So it was partly ahead of its time. But the XFL did return in 2020, but like with a lot of things, like with a lot of businesses, with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the XFL, unfortunately, the season had to be postponed and eventually cancelled, and the XFL filed for bankruptcy in April after COVID-19 pandemic prompted the cancellation of its inaugural season, which, to be honest, as I mentioned, I watched the first few games and it was good. I enjoyed it, and the season actually got off to a promising start in terms of a television audience as well. They had a broadcast agreement with Fox. I think they had an agreement with ESPN. I don't know about NBC. I can't remember that, but they certainly had an agreement with Fox. I believe ESPN as well. But they had good television deals. They had reasonable Reasonable viewing figures as well. The XFL in its first week drew more than 3 million viewers, which, comparing it to Raw and SmackDown right now, obviously I know this was pre-pandemic, but 3 million viewers was good. The audience went down about half in the fifth and final week before shutdown, but that's difficult to compare because obviously in that fifth and final week, you were starting to get hit with the real pandemic news. People were starting to cable cut and start to be made redundant or furloughed, and people looking to save money. There was a lot of confusion. People were just watching the news, which is what they're doing now. So it's difficult to say that, but it was doing well, and it was good. It was good. And to be honest, live sports always, and it will be going forward. Obviously, ratings are down for everything in television at the moment, but live sports is always a reliable vehicle to deliver ratings when it comes to television shows. There's a good chance that a number of traditional TV networks, including perhaps streaming companies, including the likes of Netflix, Amazon Prime, do live sports streaming over here in the UK. They've done a lot of, or some, television production of Premier League, EPL games. Perhaps they would be interested in adding the XFL to their portfolios. A point in time where it's very difficult to get new content on television networks because TV productions, film productions, all of that sort of stuff has been shut down. Potentially having another sports league, the TV networks are going to be interested in it. I absolutely think it's going to be interested in it. That's why I say paying $15 million split evenly between 3 people or potentially more, I think it's a steal. I think it's an absolute steal because, as I mentioned, the XFL did have a deal with Fox in place. Will they continue to do that? It'll be interesting. Of course, WWE has a deal with Fox. Even though at the time, do you remember when the XFL was first announced by Vince McMahon in 2018? They're not related. I'm going to be focusing on the XFL. It's done by, what was his company called? It was like Alpha Entertainment. That was it. It's going to be completely different from WWE. That was the problem back in the early days of the XFL in 2000, 2001, was that it was essentially a WWE doing professional football, and it was just bad. It was just bad, and a lot of the time there is a divide between sports fans and or not necessarily sports fans, but people in the sporting world when it comes to network executives, when it comes to sporting executives and professional wrestling. They turn their noses up at it. It's not real sport, all of that sort of stuff. This is real. This is football, and that just turned a lot of people off the original XFL. So when they brought it back this year, or Vince McMahon brought it back this year, the idea was if we're gonna have it completely separate, and it's going to be completely different, and you're not going to have to worry about Roman Reigns coming on the field and dropping a spear on someone when they do a touchdown or anything silly like that. And it was good. It was very, very good. And like I mentioned, the XFL, it did deliver ratings somewhat in its first few weeks. It continuously went down, but that was the pandemic, I think. It makes sense, in my opinion, for The Rock to buy it. It has come out of left field. I certainly didn't see this coming. I thought the XFL once again was dead after Vince McMahon filed for bankruptcy when it came to the COVID pandemic and the league in April of this year. But networks already have relationships with The Rock. He's an executive producer of the Titan Games, which is a sporting competition reality series already on NBC. So he's already got links with NBC. So NBC potentially could be someone that would be interested in picking up the XFL for whenever they do their next season. And I mentioned with what's his name, Jerry Cardinale and Redbird Capital, they've been buying a lot of sports related franchises at the moment. They recently bought French soccer team Toulouse over here in Europe. In addition, Cardinale, along with Oakland A's executive Billy Beane, created a special purpose acquisition company, or SPAC, that focuses on buying companies in sports media and data analytics. So they're trying to take advantage of this whole confusion when it comes to the economy and it comes to sporting related problems, when it comes to teams, owners, etc. At the moment, they're trying to make the best of a bad situation at the moment. And some people might call that vulturing or anything like that. I call it business. So it's very, very interesting. The private equity firm is also an investor in the Yes Network, the regional sports networks that shows New York Yankees games, as well as on-location experiences, which is partly owned by the NFL, and also One Team Partners, a tie-up that includes unions that represent the MLB, Major League Baseball, and NFL players. So they've already got a lot of relationships in sport right now. And in my opinion, and I don't want to take this moment in, I'm just going to poo-poo all over Vince McMahon and his running of the XFL and all of that sort of stuff, because I don't think that's very fair. But this company that's bought him now, the XFL now, they're a lot more well versed in running sporting franchises. They've got links with, like I mentioned, a soccer team over here in Europe. They've got links with unions that represent Major League Baseball and NFL players. They've got links with networks that show a regional network that shows New York Yankees games. They've owned to lose. They've got sports media and analytics already purchased in their company. The Rock, who is going to be the face of this deal, has links with American football. He's got links with NBC. He's got a production company. He's the biggest movie star on the planet right now. All of it just makes so much sense, in my opinion, and I think it's a very interesting purchase from The Rock, and certainly something that has come out of left field, but in terms of a financial decision, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense. Now, in terms of the bankruptcy filing by Vince McMahon earlier this year by Alpha Entertainment, which was his sort of separate company that Vince McMahon had decided to run the XFL from, listed the league with its assets and liabilities in the range of about 10 million to 50 million. So 15 million, again, it's a great steal. I think it's a steal, and it's split between numerous parties. It makes a lot of sense. It's very interesting. I thought the XFL was dead. It's interesting that at the time, remember, you had all these people that mocked Vince McMahon for bringing back the XFL, right? Why are you bringing back the XFL? It failed so much the first time. It's stupid. Why are you bringing it back? You're just a wrestling guy trying to do a sports league. And it's interesting that now, obviously, it didn't work out, and that's not any fault of Vince McMahon, and that's the fault of the world stopping and going crazy this year and having the plague show up. It's interesting that now Vince McMahon decided, like, it's not financially viable. I can't run it at this period of time in the economic climate, etc., etc. Now that it was up for sale, suddenly you got people coming in straight left, right, and centre because it's a good idea. It is a good idea. In that lull after the NFL season, people like to watch American football. And in that lull in the spring season after the Super Bowl in February, people still want to watch American football. Some people have their issues with the NFL in terms of rules, etc., etc. So there is a point in the market when it comes to a league like the XFL. Of course, we've seen other leagues come and go and fail. Was it the American Football League or whatever it was? I'm not massive on American football, but they failed. But the XFL, as I mentioned, I watched a few of the games earlier this year. Their production was different. The way they presented it was different. I really enjoyed the way they did the kickoff in the XFL. I really enjoyed having the head coaches mic'd the whole time. I found that fascinating. And I also found it fascinating that immediately after plays, good or bad, or immediately after issues on the field, the players would have a microphone in their face and they'd have to comment on it straight away. I thought it was a really unique way of presenting American football, and I thought it was good. And it was a shame that it ended the way that it ended. Had the pandemic not hit, and look, I wish the pandemic hadn't hit. I think all of us do. I think we all wish we were living in normality right now. But had it not hit, I think it would have done fine. We would have had several seasons of it. I think it was scheduled, or Vince McMahon was going to fund it out of his own pocket, he said, for at least 3 seasons before hopefully he was going to start making some proper money when it comes to TV deals and merchandising, etc., or franchising. And I think there was potential there. I still think there is potential in the league. I can't believe it's back again. I think it's crazy. It will never die. Of course, Vince McMahon announced the XFL's reboot in 2018. Spent 2 years developing the 8-team league. And it's interesting because so much changed with WWE, or maybe didn't change with WWE, but had planned to change in WWE during this period of time. Vince McMahon announced the XFL's reboot in 2018, and it was said that he was going to be focusing the majority of his time on that. He was still at some WWE shows, but he wasn't at as many as he used to be when the XFL was starting up. You would hear these stories about, at the time, Paul Heyman running the Gorilla for Monday Night Raw, or Triple H running the Gorilla for SmackDown. You had Eric Bischoff or Bruce Pritchard, the executive directors of SmackDown, in their respective times. They were running the Gorilla for SmackDown because Vince McMahon wasn't always at the TVs because he was focusing on the XFL. Now, once the XFL went completely wrong and filed for bankruptcy in April due to the COVID pandemic, Vince McMahon subsequently moved all of his attention back to WWE, started micromanaging things for better or for worse. It's his company, he can do what he wants. And I think a lot of people thought that that was it when it came to the XFL. We would never see it again. So very interesting. It's a really interesting story. I really do think, and this might just be my opinion, this might be me being very reactive to the news as I'm hearing it right now, but you have to think that everything The Rock touches nowadays, everything The Rock gets his fingerprints on or is involved in, makes money. Anything The Rock gets involved in does very well and makes money because he's The Rock. He's the biggest action star, movie star, whatever you want to call him. He is the biggest thing on planet Earth. He is the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the modern generation. Everyone knows him from professional wrestling, from films, from reality TV shows, from TV shows, Ballers or whatever it was. He is just a massive action star. He's a massive movie star. There's a reason he is the highest paid movie star in the world. You look back at The Rock's films, to be honest, and this might upset a few people, but you look back at The Rock's films, like, his films aren't amazing. His films are not amazing. They're like, again, they're like Arnold Schwarzenegger films. Like, there are some Arnold Schwarzenegger films and some of The Rock films, you watch them and go, that's a god-awful film. But why am I watching it? Because The Rock's in it. Because Arnold Schwarzenegger was in it. It's the same principle. It's the exact same principle. And I think having The Rock associated with the XFL whenever it will be have its next season, which I'm assuming will be after the NFL season later this year, back in February. So maybe we're looking at a 2021 start date for the new XFL around February time, like it was meant to be this year for the new XFL. I think it's going to do really well. I really do think it's going to do really well. I think the biggest problem when Vince McMahon owned the league and was developing the league, and it was the same problem as it was back in 2001, and it's the same problem as I think it was this time around. Not as bad this time around, but whenever you've got Vince McMahon running something or associated with something, you always have the WWE having its association with it. They tried to run it as separate entities this time round, but just the fact of having Vince McMahon, who is synonymous with WWE, synonymous with pro wrestling, I mean, he has been the godfather of pro wrestling for however many years, like 50 years or whatever. And he's the godfather of WWE. He's synonymous with WWE. He's the chairman. He's the owner. He's the reason it's the success or the global business that it is today. Whatever he is associated with, it's going to have pro wrestling associated with it. And for better or worse, that's a good thing or it's a bad thing. As I mentioned earlier, some networks, some casual fans, some football fans that aren't fans of professional wrestling or aren't fans of WWE will go, I'm not going to watch that league run by that wrestling promoter. I'm not going to watch that league, promoted by Vince McMahon. Why would I want to watch that? He doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. Doesn't have a clue about American football players. His favorite American football player is Ernie Ladd or whoever because it was a American football player or whatever, right? That is people's response to it. And for better or for worse, they might be, in my opinion, I think their judgment there is a bit misguided and not exactly factually accurate, but that's the case when it comes to Vince McMahon being involved in the football league. The irony is that The Rock is a pro wrestling star. He made his name in professional wrestling, but because he's transitioned so much into the mainstream that he's not even almost considered a pro wrestler anymore, right? He's a movie star. He's an action star. He's The Rock. People want him to be president, right? And people joke about that, but honestly, people would vote for him. So having someone like The Rock associated and own the league, in my opinion, will get more eyeballs on the product rather than if Vince McMahon owned it. And I think it will be, if I had to put my neck out on the line now and speculate and guess, in my opinion, I think the XFL will be a bigger success with The Rock being a part of it. Now, he's not going to be completely at the helm. The league will have a commissioner like they had previously. He will just probably be the face of it, or he'll probably just be involved in a lot of press and promotion and all of that sort of stuff. But I think it will do well, and I think it will do better. I really, really do. Another bit of news also is that the XFL president, Jeffrey Pollack, oversaw the sale process of the league. So the deal's done. It's not a case of, this might happen, this is going to happen. The Rock is a partial owner of the XFL. He's back in American football. It's a surprising news. It's breaking news. But it's interesting news. And again, if I had to put my neck out on the line, I think it will do very well. I really do, because everything that The Rock touches does very, very well. And he's got the links with any network wants anything to do with The Rock, because he's a proven draw. Regardless if it's in pro wrestling or not, he's a proven draw in the box office. He's a proven draw on television. Any television network wants something to do with The Rock. So if The Rock says, I've got this new football league, I'm going to be a part of it. I don't think he's going to be part of the presentation in terms of being on commentary or presenting the shows or anything like that. He's going to be the Dana White figure, probably, in terms of being the face of it. He's not going to be involved in creating the rules or anything like that. Again, the league will probably have a commissioner or something like that. But he'll be the face of the league. And because The Rock's involved, it will make money, it will draw fans, and I think it's a very, very interesting move. I would love to hear Vince McMahon's reaction to this. The Rock must have had some form of conversation with him, right? He must have had some form of conversation as to, look, Vince, I know this is your league. I know you made it, you founded it, but I'm buying it, and I'm going to make it a success. And I really do think that's the case. The also interesting thing is, I believe, was this for the first XFL match in 2001? I can't remember off the top of my head who the teams were that were playing. But you had Vince McMahon come onto the field, do his whole welcome, or this is the XFL, all that BS. But I also believe, if I'm not mistaken, you actually also had The Rock come out onto the field before that game kicked off, and they had a sort of Rock promo and all this sort of stuff, and they had his association with American football in the past. So interesting. It's just fate, isn't it, that he was on the field for the first game, or before the first game kicked off back in 2001. Fast forward, 19 years later, nearly 20 years later, and he's a part owner of the league, and he's going to be responsible for the league being revamped and brought back to television for the third time. So very interesting news. Didn't see this one coming, but that's just the nature of news and pro wrestling and sports at the moment, isn't it? So The Rock is a partial owner of the XFL. He's purchased the XFL along with his business partner, Danny Garcia, and a third partner in, what was his name? Jerry Cardinale and Redbird Capital. So very interesting, very interesting. What are your thoughts on The Rock purchasing the XFL? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll be sure to respond to all of your comments down there. I really enjoy interacting with you guys on this channel. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give us a like. It really does help us out. Go up the rankings on YouTube and get into people's recommendation feeds. And most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. We're over 600 subscribers now. The next goal is 700 subscribers on that eventual road to 1,000 subscribers. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be doing a lot more live streams, watch-alongs, reactions, all of that sort of stuff to Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, Impact Wrestling, Friday Night SmackDown. Who even knows? We might even do some watch-alongs for the XFL when it returns next year with The Rock at the helm. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you have, just know that I really do appreciate it. I appreciate anyone that takes the time to watch these videos, listen to this channel. It's all about sharing opinions. Maybe it's not usually about pro wrestling, but this time it isn't. So very, very interesting. You can also follow us on our social media platforms. The handles are on the screen right now. The links are in the description box below. It's at 365 Wrestle on Twitter and at Wrestle News 365 on Facebook and Instagram. So be sure to give us a like or follow there if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.